Massive ancient complexes achieved perfect symmetry without modern tools. This architectural harmony was not an accident but a deliberate strategy, a secret language written in stone across the world. We will uncover the precise methods that allowed builders to align entire cities with the stars and carve balance into mountainsides. You will learn how ancient cultures encoded their entire world view into the very layout of their cities, revealing a forgotten genius for organization. How did they maintain flawless proportions over kilometers using only ropes and stakes? What cosmic truths were they trying to mirror in their designs? By the end, you will forever see these ancient sites not as random ruins, but as carefully calculated masterpieces of order. What does our own modern world reveal about our search for balance? The true scale of this ambition becomes clear when you realize they were not just constructing buildings, they were composing entire landscapes. Monumental symmetry is the term for this breathtaking orchestration of stone and space, a design philosophy that applied geometric principles across vast distances to make a city or sacred center function as one unified entity. Think of it not as a single balanced facade, but as a web of intentional alignments connecting temples, plazas, and avenues into a single, harmonious whole. This was architecture on the scale of a worldview, a physical echo of a culture's deepest beliefs about cosmic order and humanity's place within it. Leading researchers in the field describe these sites as cosmograms, maps of the universe made solid and walkable. To understand how this was achieved, we need to look at the core components of this ancient design language. The most fundamental of these is the axis, a central line that organizes everything around it. This was not merely a planning convenience. A primary axis was often aligned with the rising sun on a solstice or a significant star, physically tying the city to the rhythms of the cosmos. From this central spine, other forms of symmetry would unfold. Bilateral symmetry, the mirror image balance we see in a butterfly's wings, was used to create a powerful sense of order and procession along that main line. Then there is the radial plan, where avenues or structures radiate out from a central point like the spokes of a wheel, creating a dynamic focus. Each of these strategies transformed chaotic space into meaningful place. They were the tools used to carve a vision of perfect harmony directly into the earth itself, a vision we are only now beginning to fully decipher. This invisible framework was a language of lines and angles, a silent mathematics etched into the ground before a single stone was laid. Ancient architects saw the circle not just as a shape, but as a symbol of unity and the heavens. The square represented the earthly domain, the four cardinal directions, and the stability of the material world. By combining them, they sought to manifest a perfect union between the celestial and the terrestrial. This is where the mandala becomes so much more than a drawing. It is a cosmic map, a geometric prayer given physical form. A temple laid out as a mandala does not simply contain sacred space. It becomes a miniature universe, with every gateway, wall, and tower occupying a precise cosmological position. The entire structure is a machine for understanding the divine order. The scholar Robert Lawler captured this perfectly, describing geometry as the grammar of a symbolic language. The builders were not just craftsmen, they were philosophers speaking in stone. Their tools were humble, ropes and stakes, but their vision was boundless. With a loop of rope and a central stake, they could inscribe a perfect circle upon the earth. From this, they could generate a perfect square, and from that square, an entire grid of harmonious proportions. One of their most powerful tools was a shape known as the Vesica Piscis. Imagine two circles of the same size overlapping so that the edge of each passes through the other's center. The almond-shaped space where they intersect is a reservoir of perfect ratios. Ancient builders used this form to derive the square root of 2, the square root of 3, and the golden ratio, proportions believed to be the very building blocks of beauty in nature. These ratios then dictated the height of a doorway, the width of a hall, and the spacing between towering columns. Every element, from the grandest facade to the smallest detail, was connected by this invisible web of geometry. It was a code that ensured the entire complex hummed with a single, resonant frequency of balance, a silent harmony we can still feel centuries later. This central axis was far more than a line in the sand. It was the spine of the entire design, a sacred corridor that channeled both physical movement and spiritual intention. Think of it as the backbone of a living creature, providing both rigid structure and a pathway for vital energy. The entire complex was organized around this unshakable line, with every major structure, gate, and avenue positioned to create a perfect mirror image on either side. This bilateral symmetry produced a powerful sense of order and procession, guiding a person from the profane outer world toward the sacred heart of the complex. In ancient Egyptian temples, this journey was a carefully choreographed experience. One would begin in the bright, bustling outer courtyards, accessible to many, and move inward through progressively more restricted and dimly lit halls, the ceiling lowering with each step. This physical path, straight as an arrow along the central axis, mirrored the soul's own journey toward enlightenment, culminating in the silent, dark sanctuary where the statue of the god resided. This was not just a walk through a building, it was a symbolic ascent. The renowned historian Mircea Eliade described this central line as the axis mundi, the world axis, a point where heaven and earth were believed to connect. It was a conduit between realms. Establishing this line with perfect precision was the first and most critical act of construction. Using advanced surveying techniques for their time, builders would sight the rising sun on a solstice or track the path of a significant star, physically anchoring their entire project to the cosmos. Once this primary line was immutable, secondary axes could branch off at perfect right angles, creating a hierarchical grid. This grid organized space not just for beauty, but for function, dictating everything from the most sacred temple precincts to the layout of administrative districts, all according to a deeply held sense of social and religious importance. The true genius of axial planning lies in this scalability. No matter how vast the city or complex became, this method ensured it never devolved into chaos. It remained a clear, legible, and harmonious expression of a culture's vision for a perfectly ordered world. This mirroring effect extended far beyond simple aesthetics. It was a profound statement of order, a physical declaration that every element of the world had its perfect counterpart. The Forbidden City in Beijing stands as a masterclass in this principle. Its entire layout, a vast sequence of halls, gates, and courtyards, is a perfect reflection along a single north-south axis, but the genius lies in the details. It was not merely that the Hall of Supreme Harmony had an identical roof on the other side. Entire functional zones were mirrored, with administrative offices, imperial gardens, and residential quarters each having their symmetrical twin. This created a deeply ingrained sense of a balanced universe, where every action and every role had its equal and opposite place, reinforcing the emperor's role as the central pivot point of all existence. The Roman architect Vitruvius would later write extensively on this, codifying symmetry as a cornerstone of good architecture, essential for strength, utility, and beauty. He argued that a building must be durable, useful, and beautiful, and symmetry was the thread that wove these three ideals together. But how did ancient builders achieve such flawless mirroring over such immense scales? The secret lay in the use of a standardized module. This was a single, repeating unit of measurement, perhaps the distance between two columns or the width of a specific doorway. Once this module was established, it could be replicated perfectly on both sides of the central axis. This created a rhythmic repetition, a visual cadence that the human brain finds instinctively pleasing and orderly. The psychological impact of walking through such a space is profound. It evokes a deep sense of stability, power, and perfection, making the individual feel part of a grand, unshakable design. Bilateral symmetry was in essence the visual language of absolute balance and control, speaking directly to our subconscious yearning for harmony. The sky itself became their primary blueprint. For these master builders, the ultimate source of perfect order was not found on Earth, but in the predictable, cyclical dance of celestial bodies. They were architects who doubled as astronomers, meticulously observing the sun, moon, and planets for generations, translating those cosmic pathways directly into the layout of their cities and temples. This was not simply about marking time, it was about physically anchoring their world to the heavens. A brilliant example of this is the Sun Temple at Machu Picchu, where specific windows and carved stone altars are positioned with such exactitude that during the June solstice, a single blade of sunlight pierces the opening to illuminate a sacred rock in a dramatic, symbolic display. This entire practice, which we now call Archaeoastronomy, demanded a profound understanding of geometry to project these perfect celestial lines onto the rugged, uneven terrain of a mountain ridge. The great stone circles of Stonehenge stand as a monumental testament to this principle. The symmetry of its towering trilithons is not an end in itself, but a direct function of its alignment with the summer solstice sunrise and the winter solstice sunset. As the astronomer Giulio Magli describes, these alignments served as cosmological anchors. They tied the human-made world to the perceived, unshakable order of the cosmos. This strategy created a living, breathing symmetry that changed with the seasons. The complex was not a static monument, but a dynamic participant in the cosmic cycle, continually reaffirming the sacred bond between the community and the universe. By looking upward, these ancient cultures found a universal, eternal standard for creating harmony on the ground. Yet this celestial and axial symmetry found its most practical and enduring expression on the ground, in the form of the grid. When ancient engineers faced the monumental task of planning an entire city from scratch, they turned to the Gridiron plan, a network of perfectly perpendicular streets that created uniform city blocks. This was the ultimate tool for imposing large-scale symmetry over vast distances, a rational and endlessly repeatable framework. Over 4,000 years ago, the cities of the Indus Valley civilization, like Mohenjo-Daro, were laid out with astonishing precision using this very method. Their streets ran straight as arrows, intersecting at right angles to create a city that functioned with remarkable efficiency, complete with sophisticated drainage and water supply systems running beneath the orderly streets. This was not haphazard growth, it was a master plan etched into the earth. Centuries later, the Greek thinker Hippodamus of Miletus would become famous for formalizing this approach, designing cities with wide, straight avenues to promote easy movement and equal access to public spaces for all citizens. The grid's true power lay in its scalability and its ability to enforce balance. It allowed planners to position major public buildings, bustling markets, and serene temples at key central nodes or along the main thoroughfares, ensuring these important structures enjoyed a symmetrical relationship within the urban fabric. Consistency was maintained through a standardized unit of measurement like the Roman pes or foot, which acted as a common denominator for every street width and block depth. But the grid was far more than a practical solution for traffic and sanitation. It was a profound philosophical statement, a declaration of human-imposed order upon the perceived chaos of the natural world. It created a balanced, predictable, and legible environment that shaped the daily lives of everyone within it, proving that the quest for symmetry was not just for temples and palaces, but for building a harmonious society itself. But the most breathtaking symmetry was often an illusion, a perfect copy cast not in stone, but upon the surface of water. Ancient architects understood that a still pool could act as a living mirror, doubling the grandeur of any structure and dissolving the hard line between the physical world and something more. The later masterpiece of the Taj Mahal offers a timeless example where the entire mausoleum is perfectly duplicated in its long reflecting pool, creating a vertical balance that makes the white marble appear to float between earth and sky. This was not a decorative afterthought. It was a deliberate strategy to amplify harmony. Centuries earlier, the Minoan Palace of Knossos was engineered with sophisticated water channels and central courts that scholars suggest may have used reflective surfaces for both practical and profound symbolic purposes. To achieve this, builders executed incredible feats of hydraulic engineering, leveling vast basins with perfect precision and managing water sources to ensure the mirror remained unbroken and clear. This tranquil surface became a powerful symbol in many worldviews, representing the thin, shimmering boundary between our tangible reality and the spiritual realm. By adding this dynamic, liquid dimension, ancient designers infused their static stone symmetry with life and movement, creating a balanced world that was not only seen but also mysteriously reflected, inviting the viewer to contemplate the perfect order that lay just beneath the surface. The true secret to this vast harmony was a single, repeatable number. To coordinate thousands of workers across a sprawling construction site, ancient planners relied on a standardized module, a fixed unit of measurement that governed the size of every single element. This master key could be based on something as tangible as the length of a specific brick or the average span of a human forearm. By locking every measurement to this one unit, they ensured that every column, every doorway, and every hall was proportionally related, creating a visual rhythm that the eye recognizes as deeply pleasing. The ancient Greeks elevated this idea into a high art with their classical orders. In their Doric temples, for example, the diameter of a column at its base became the fundamental module. This single measurement then dictated the column's total height, the space between each column, and the precise dimensions of the entire structure above it. This was not random guesswork. It was a system of interlocking ratios, a mathematical recipe for beauty where every part knew its place in relation to the whole. As the architectural historian John Onions observed, these proportional systems were often directly inspired by the human form, reflecting a profound belief that a beautiful building should echo the perfect proportions of the human body. This philosophy meant that architecture was not just shelter, but an extension of humanity itself. By adhering to this strict modular rule, a master builder could dispatch teams to quarry stone, carve capitals, and shape roof beams in distant locations, all with the absolute confidence that when the pieces arrived at the site, they would lock together in perfect, seamless harmony. This systematic approach was the only way to manage the breathtaking complexity of these monumental projects, transforming a chaotic mountain of raw materials into a single, resonant chord of stone. These immense projects were not imposed upon the landscape but grew from it. Ancient architects possessed a genius for sculpting the earth itself, using elevation and terracing to amplify symmetry on a breathtaking scale. Rather than flattening a mountain, they would carve a series of vast, level platforms into its side. Each terrace became a perfect stage for symmetrical structures, creating a visual hierarchy that drew the eye ever upward. From a distance, the entire complex would appear as a single, unified monument, a man-made mountain that echoed the natural one. The Inca citadel of Machu Picchu stands as the ultimate testament to this philosophy. Its agricultural, urban, and religious sectors are meticulously terraced, following the wild contours of the Andes while maintaining a rigorous geometric order. The terraces are not random steps, they are a series of horizontal planes, each with its own balanced layout, stacked to form a cohesive and awe-inspiring whole. This approach transformed an entire ridge into a structured, layered city. Similarly, the the ziggurats of Mesopotamia functioned as cosmic mountains. Each ascending tier was smaller than the last, perfectly centered and proportioned to represent a higher level of the cosmos, leading from the earthly plane toward the heavens. To achieve this, builders employed sophisticated tools like water levels and immense, coordinated labor to move earth and stone, creating these perfectly flat platforms on impossible slopes. The change in elevation was not just structural, it was deeply ceremonial. It guided a person on a physical and spiritual journey, a processional climb from the mundane world below toward the most sacred and symmetrical center at the summit. This strategic use of the land demonstrates a profound dialogue between human geometry and natural topography, a partnership that created some of the most enduringly harmonious places on Earth. This alignment with the four cardinal directions transformed a structure from a mere building into a miniature world. Ancient planners saw in north, south, east, and west a fixed universal coordinate system, a cosmic grid onto which they could map their deepest beliefs. Orienting a complex to these points was an act of profound symbolism, a way of physically rooting human creation within the eternal and unchanging geometry of the cosmos itself. The staggering precision of the Great Pyramid of Giza stands as a timeless testament to this ambition. Its four sides are aligned to true north, south, east, and west with an error of less than 1/15 of a single degree, a feat that seems to defy the technological capabilities of its era. This was not just a display of technical skill. Each direction held a powerful meaning. The east, the source of the rising sun, was universally linked with birth, renewal, and life-giving energy. The west, where the sun descended each evening, was naturally associated with the close of life and the realm of ancestors. By embedding these meanings into their architecture, builders infused every stone with narrative. Major ceremonial avenues and the primary axes of entire cities would almost always run either east-west, tracing the sun's path, or north-south, creating a cross-shaped plan that divided the complex into four distinct quadrants. This quarter design is a pattern found across the globe, from the rigorously planned Roman military camps known as the castrum to the sacred plazas of Maya cities. Each quadrant could then be assigned a specific purpose or symbolic value, further reinforcing the complex as a complete cosmogram. But how did they find true north without a magnetic compass? The answer lies in the patient, generational observation of the night sky. They would track the circular path of a circumpolar star, marking the extreme points of its rotation to pinpoint the unmoving center, the celestial North Pole. This arduous process ensured that the symmetry of their architecture was not just a human idea, but a direct echo of the universe's own perfect order. The most precise tools were often the simplest. A rope, a few stakes, and a mind versed in geometry were all an ancient master builder needed to map a perfect world onto the raw earth. They understood a fundamental truth, that a tightly drawn cord between two stakes creates the most reliable straight line imaginable. Their genius lay in applying basic principles with unwavering consistency. One of their most powerful secrets was the 3-4-5 triangle. If you measure 3 units along one rope, 4 along another, and ensure the distance between the ends is exactly 5 units, you have created a perfect right angle. This simple, unshakable rule allowed them to square the corners of vast temple foundations and city walls with a confidence we would now reserve for laser levels. From a single, sacred center point, a long rope would become a giant compass, scribing a perfect circle to define the boundary of a ceremonial plaza or the curve of an outer wall. This primary circle then became the generator for everything else. By inscribing a square within it, or a hexagon, they could establish the cardinal directions and create a proportional grid that could be expanded across the entire site. The legendary Egyptian rope stretchers, the Harpadonapti, were the masters of this craft. Their knotted ropes were not just measuring tapes, they were portable repositories of fixed ratios and angles. With these humble tools, they laid out the staggering precision of the Giza Plateau, ensuring that the pyramids and their attendant temples related to one another with celestial accuracy. This practical, hands-on geometry was profoundly democratic. It did not require rare technology, only knowledge and skill. A master surveyor could teach a team the method, and that team could then go and lay out a distant section of the city, secure in the knowledge that their work would align perfectly with the central plan. This was the true magic of the rope and stake. It transformed abstract geometric ideals into a shared, physical language that could coordinate thousands of workers across a sprawling landscape. The legacy of this simple ingenuity is a powerful reminder that the greatest structures in history were born not from complex machinery, but from the elegant application of fundamental truths held taut in a length of fiber. But this obsession with perfect balance was never just about engineering or aesthetics. It was driven by a profound cultural imperative, a deep-seated belief that the cosmos itself was built upon a foundation of opposing yet complementary forces. In the worldview of many ancient societies, reality was a delicate dance between order and chaos, light and dark, the masculine and the feminine. Their architecture was not merely a reflection of this belief, it was an active tool for maintaining it. They were building to keep the universe in balance. We see this principle manifest with stunning clarity in the twin pyramid complexes of the ancient Maya at sites like Tikal. These were not identical structures built for visual effect. They were often distinct, representing complementary powers, perhaps a solar and a lunar deity, or the realms of the living and the ancestors. Their mirrored placement across a grand plaza created a physical landscape of duality, a permanent reminder that the world required both sides to be whole. The rituals performed in these spaces demanded this symmetry. A long, straight causeway was not just a road, it was a processional path for deities and priests, a ceremonial runway that required perfect linearity to be ritually effective. At the heart of these complexes, a central altar or temple provided a focal point where the community could gather in a balanced formation, their very presence reinforcing the social and cosmic order. The entire layout of a sacred city could map a creation myth onto the earth, with each symmetrically positioned structure representing a different stage in the spiritual journey of a hero or a god. This was architecture as a participatory act. Every ceremony, every procession held within these balanced spaces was believed to directly influence the stability of the world. The symmetry was therefore a functional necessity, as vital to the community's well-being as any wall or reservoir. It was the physical framework through which they could engage with the divine, ensuring their rituals resonated with the perfect harmony they saw in the stars above. The Mesopotamian ziggurat was a machine for divine connection. Its rigid, concentric symmetry was not merely an aesthetic choice. It was a physical diagram of the universe as the Mesopotamians understood it, a cosmos of distinct, stacked levels. Each perfectly centered tier represented a higher plane of existence, a step closer to the realm of the gods. The entire structure functioned as a colossal staircase, a bridge between heaven and earth. At the summit, a small, sacred shrine awaited the deity, a place where the divine could descend and commune with the priesthood. The three immense staircases of the Ziggurat of all converging on that single, elevated point, created a powerful visual and spiritual focus, channeling all movement and intention toward the heavens. This entire monumental effort was made possible by a seemingly mundane innovation, the standardized mud brick. Millions of these identical units were produced, each one a perfect module that allowed for the repetitive, precise layering essential to maintaining the structure's flawless geometric form over decades of construction. The ziggurat's base was meticulously squared with the four cardinal directions, anchoring the entire city to the cosmic grid and making the temple a true axis mundi, the center of the world. In its shadow, the bustling city unfolded, its very existence validated by this towering symbol of a perfectly ordered cosmos, a testament to humanity's early, audacious drive to build heaven on earth. This architectural language of perfect balance found one of its most powerful expressions in the very heart of classical city life. In ancient Greece and Rome, the Agora and the Forum evolved from simple marketplaces into the civic soul of the city, and their designs became masterclasses in applied symmetry. While early versions grew somewhat organically, later imperial projects transformed these spaces into breathtakingly ordered environments. The Forum of Trajan in Rome was not merely built, it was engineered as a vast rectangular plaza, a grand stage for public life framed by colonnades and monumental buildings arranged with flawless bilateral precision. The core strategy was deceptively simple. A long central axis created a powerful processional route, and along this line, identical or mirror image structures rose on either side. Imagine standing in that open space, flanked by two immense basilicas, their facades perfectly matched. One might house bustling commercial courts while the other handled civic administration, yet their symmetrical presence conveyed a unified, unshakable order. Further along, two libraries, one for Greek scrolls and one for Latin, would face each other, creating a visual and intellectual balance. This was not just beautiful urbanism, it was a physical manifestation of a balanced, well-governed society. Every public activity, from commerce to jurisprudence, unfolded within this framework, subtly reinforcing the idea that civic harmony was a direct result of architectural harmony. This visual order was amplified by the rigorous use of the classical orders. Whether Doric, Ionic, or Corinthian, every column, every scroll-shaped capital, and every horizontal entablature followed a strict proportional system. The diameter of a column at its base became a module that dictated its height and the spacing to its neighbor, creating a rhythmic cadence that the eye reads as deeply pleasing. This consistency ensured that even buildings with different functions contributed to a single, harmonious visual chorus. The Forum's symbolic power was cemented by its location, positioned precisely at the crossroads of the city's two main thoroughfares. The Cardo, running north-south, and the Decumanus, running east-west, met at its center, placing this hub of public life at the absolute geometric and symbolic core of the urban grid. Here, the grand axes of human planning and cosmic direction converged, making the Forum a living symbol of Roman civilization itself, a perfectly balanced center from which order radiated out to the very edges of the empire. Yet the most expansive canvas for this ancient symmetry was not a wall or a temple, but the earth itself. In the arid plains of southern Peru, the Nazca people executed a breathtaking feat of reverse architecture, creating symmetry not by piling stone upon stone, but by carefully removing the dark, sun-baked pebbles that blanket the desert to reveal the pale, contrasting earth beneath. The resulting geoglyphs are lines and figures of staggering scale, some stretching for kilometers, their forms only fully visible from the vantage point of the sky. This was symmetry on a truly monumental plane, a giant's drawing board where a hummingbird's wings could span the length of a modern runway, each half a perfect mirror of the other. How did they achieve such flawless proportions across such impossible distances without ever seeing the whole? The secret likely lay in a masterful process of scaling up. Researchers suggest that a master design, perhaps drawn on a manageable surface, was translated to the desert floor using a system of ropes, stakes, and a fixed unit of measurement. A small central point could be established for a radial design, and from this, long cords would be used to mark out perfect circles and sweeping curves. For a bilaterally symmetrical figure like the iconic spider, a central axis line was first laid down with immaculate precision. Teams of workers would then use this line as their guide, carefully clearing the gravel on either side to create the mirror image legs, body, and other features. The true genius of this method was its scalability. By dividing the large figure into smaller, manageable segments, each team could work on a single part, confident that their section would connect perfectly with the next, guided by the unerring geometry of the central plan. This process required an intuitive understanding of perspective and the curvature of the Earth, compensating for visual distortions across the vast, rolling terrain to ensure that a line stretching to the horizon remained perfectly straight from an aerial view. While their ultimate purpose is a subject of ongoing study, many of the lines point toward water sources in the distant hills or align with celestial events like the solstice sun. This suggests these giant symmetrical forms were not mere art, but a profound, ritualistic inscription upon the land, a way of mapping cosmic and hydrological order onto the very ground they walked. The Nazca lines stand as a powerful testament to a different kind of architectural strategy, one where harmony was achieved not by building up, but by scraping away, revealing a perfect, hidden order that was waiting just beneath the surface all along. These observatory complexes reveal a world where architecture was a living clock. The very stones were calibrated to mark the passage of time, not in minutes and hours, but in the grand, sweeping arcs of planets and stars. At the Mayan city of Chichen Itza, the Caracol stands as a breathtaking example, a round tower perched upon a vast rectangular platform. Its unique circular form, a rarity in Mayan architecture, is punctuated by narrow windows that are not placed at random. Research suggests they were precisely aligned to track the extreme positions of Venus on the horizon, a planet of immense ritual significance. This created a symmetry that was both spatial and deeply temporal. The entire layout of the surrounding ceremonial center had to conform to this primary function, ensuring that no future building would ever block these critical celestial sightlines. The symmetry of the complex was therefore a direct result of its purpose as an astronomical instrument. It was a design dictated by the need for perfect, unchanging lines of sight to the heavens. This relationship between the built environment and the cosmos was dynamic. The symmetry of the architecture remained constant, a fixed frame, while the celestial bodies performed their eternal dance within it. During a solstice or an equinox, the sun would rise or set in perfect alignment with a specific doorway or between two structures, activating the symmetry in a brilliant, seasonal display. The knowledge gained from generations of watching the sky from these vantage points was then encoded back into the city's very fabric. It influenced the creation of massive, symmetrically carved calendar stones and intricate ritual almanacs that governed the cycles of planting, harvest, and ceremony. In this way, the observatory complex was the brain of the city, a place where the observed order of the universe was translated into the social and spiritual order of the community. The symmetry was far more than a design preference. It was the physical proof of a successful conversation with the cosmos. The true perfection of these ancient structures began not with the first stone laid, but with the last one buried. Every soaring column and balanced facade rested upon a hidden masterpiece of engineering, a foundation carved into the very skin of the earth. Before symmetry could rise into the sky, it had to be anchored in absolute stability. Imagine the challenge facing these engineers. They needed to transform a rugged, uneven landscape into a perfectly level plain, a stage so immovable it could support the weight of mountains of stone for centuries. This was not a matter of simply scraping away the topsoil. At some sites, entire hills were methodically carved down and adjacent valleys filled in, a staggering undertaking of earth moving that created an artificial plateau. The goal was to create a base that behaved as a single, solid unit, a platform that would not settle or shift. Any movement, however slight, would warp the delicate alignments above, causing cracks to race through walls and columns to lean out of true. The foundation, therefore, had to be as permanent as the bedrock beneath it, At the Baalbek complex in Lebanon, this philosophy reached its breathtaking apex. Here, the foundation for the Temple of Jupiter incorporates a trinity of limestone blocks known as the Trilithon, each one weighing an estimated 800 tons. How does one even begin to move a mass equivalent to 2 fully loaded jumbo jets? The builders carved deep trenches, lining them with smooth stones to create slipways. They likely used a combination of immense wooden sleds, greased with animal fat, and complex pulley systems powered by hundreds of workers, inching these megaliths into position along earthen ramps. But moving them was only half the battle. Placing them with the required precision demanded an equally ingenious solution. Archaeologists suggest they used water-filled trenches as giant spirit levels. By marking a consistent water line on all the foundation stones, they could ensure each block was set to the exact same height, creating that crucial, unbroken level plane across the entire site. The foundation itself was laid out with the same geometric rigor as the temple it would support. Using their trusted ropes and stakes, surveyors inscribed a precise grid of right angles onto the leveled ground, marking the future positions of every wall and column. This invisible, underground lattice was the true blueprint, the first and most vital layer of the symmetrical design. The breathtaking symmetry we admire today, the perfect rows of columns and the harmonious facades, was only possible because of this obsessive, unseen work below. The visible perfection was merely the echo of a hidden, immovable order. This rhythm in stone transforms a walk through a colonnade into a kind of music. Your own footsteps begin to sync with the steady beat of the columns, each one an identical note in a grand architectural composition. At the heart of the Persian capital Persepolis, the Apadana Palace presents a forest of towering columns, originally numbering 72. Each one repeats the same carved base, the same fluted shaft, and the same breathtaking capital featuring the foreparts of 2 bulls set back to back. This relentless repetition is not monotonous, it is hypnotic. It pulls your gaze down the endless hall, creating a sense of infinite order and unshakable power. Your brain does not have to process 1,000 unique details. It relaxes into the predictable pattern, finding deep comfort in the rhythm. This is symmetry in motion, a harmony you experience with your entire body as you proceed. The ancient architects understood this psychological effect perfectly. They used rhythmic repetition as a tool to domesticate the immense. A hall that could easily feel overwhelming and cavernous instead becomes comprehensible, even intimate, because your mind can latch onto the repeating elements and measure the space with them. This principle is a universal language. You find it in the endless rows of lotus-shaped columns in an Egyptian hypostyle hall, where the ceiling seems to be held aloft by a stone garden. You find it in the repeated arches of a Roman aqueduct marching in lockstep across a valley, and you find it in the serene, covered walkways of a medieval monastery, where each identical arch frames a view of a peaceful garden, guiding a monk's contemplative steps. This strategy was as practical as it was beautiful. By standardizing a single design for a column or an arch, builders could set up workshops to mass-produce these components. Teams of stone carvers could focus on perfecting one single element, knowing that their work would join dozens of others just like it to form a cohesive whole. This modular approach accelerated construction and ensured a consistent, high-quality result across the entire complex. The rhythmic ordering of space was ultimately about creating a legible world. It transformed the potentially chaotic experience of a massive palace or temple into a guided, predictable, and deeply harmonious journey. It proves that the most powerful symmetry is not always a static mirror image, but can be the steady, reassuring beat of a drum echoing through stone for centuries. This perfect geometry was a language of power spoken in stone and space. The symmetrical layout of an ancient city was far more than an aesthetic triumph. it was a precise map of the social order itself. Your place in the hierarchy was not just a matter of title or wealth, it was physically written into the very ground you walked on. The most sacred and perfectly balanced spaces were always at the absolute center or the highest elevation, reserved exclusively for the ruler and the high priesthood. This was the pinnacle of the cosmic and social pyramid. As you moved outward from this flawless core, the rigid symmetry would often begin to soften, giving way to the more varied and less ordered districts of nobles, artisans, and commoners. The main ceremonial axis, that arrow-straight path, led directly and inevitably to the ruler's palace or the primary temple, a constant visual reminder of where ultimate authority resided. Secondary axes, still symmetrical but less grand, would branch off to the residences of the elite, creating a clear gradient of access and importance. This spatial organization was a continuous, unconscious reinforcement of the social structure. Every journey through the city, whether to a market or a public square, was a lesson in one's position within a larger, divinely sanctioned plan. The immaculate symmetry of the core was a physical representation of an ideal, unchanging cosmic order, a perfect state from which all other, less perfect forms of life were believed to emanate. Even in a later example like the Palace of Versailles, the king's bedchamber was positioned at the exact mathematical center of the entire symmetrical plan, symbolizing his role as the sun around which all of society revolved. This architectural strategy made abstract power relations tangible and inescapable. The city itself became a machine for social control, its harmonious lines guiding not just feet, but minds toward acceptance of a world where every person and everything had its designated, symmetrical place. The Parthenon's marble columns are not perfectly straight. They curve ever so subtly because the architects who placed them there understood something profound about the gap between geometry and human sight. To stand before this temple is to be caught in an elaborate and beautiful deception. Every line that looks straight is actually a gentle arc. The massive platform beneath your feet rises almost imperceptibly in the center, defying the illusion that it might sag under the immense weight of the stone. Even the columns themselves lean inward, just a few inches from base to top. These are the masterful optical corrections of classical Greek architecture, a series of calculated distortions designed to create the perfect visual harmony that pure mathematics alone could not achieve. The bulging in the middle of a column, known as intosses, stops it from appearing pinched or weak when viewed from a distance against the bright sky. Without this curve, the human eye would perceive a concave dip, a flaw in the strong vertical line. The upward curve of the stylobate, the temple's base, counters the natural tendency of a long, flat line to look as though it droops in the middle. The architects were not just building for the plumb line, they were building for the person standing in the plaza, whose perception is governed by the quirks of vision and the scale of the world. This was a geometry of lived experience. It required a deep, intuitive grasp of how we see, a form of architectural psychology practiced over 2,000 years ago. The same principles were almost certainly at work in other vast complexes, where the primary viewing angles for ceremonies and processions were known in advance. At such a scale, a line that is mathematically straight can appear to bend, and a form that is perfectly square can look distorted. The builders preemptively curved and tilted their stones to cancel out these expected illusions. This is the highest refinement of symmetrical design, where the goal shifts from achieving true geometric perfection to crafting the perfect perceptual experience. The symmetry was not in the stone alone, but in the dialogue between the stone and the eye. It was an act of profound empathy, ensuring that the awe intended by the builder was the awe truly felt by the viewer, making the grandeur of the complex feel both immense and intimately, flawlessly human. Such a grand vision could never be realized by a committee of equals. A single, unshakable will had to stand at the center of the project, a master planner holding the complete geometric blueprint in their mind. This individual, or perhaps a small, dedicated council of high priests and chief engineers, was the keeper of the symmetrical vision. Their first and most vital task was to create the master plan, a design so complete and so precise that it could survive not just the chaotic reality of a construction site, but the passage of generations. This plan was far more than a simple sketch. It was a set of immutable rules, a geometric code that dictated every proportion, every alignment, and every modular measurement. Once this sacred document was approved by the pharaoh or emperor, it became law. The centralized authority of the ruler was the engine that powered this decades-long endeavor. Only a king or a pharaoh could command the vast resources required, mobilizing tens of thousands of workers, securing entire forests for timber, and directing the output of distant quarries. This was not merely a construction project, it was a state-sponsored enterprise on a scale that would challenge many modern nations. The Egyptian pyramid projects, for instance, were managed by a highly organized bureaucracy that tracked everything from the daily bread ration for a work crew to the precise dimensions of the next block to be hauled from the Tura quarries. This centralized control was the only defense against the natural drift of time. Without it, a project meant to last centuries would quickly succumb to ad hoc additions, alterations in style, or simple human error, each small deviation fracturing the overall harmony until the original vision was lost. The master plan was therefore considered divinely inspired, its authority flowing from the gods themselves through the ruler. This spiritual sanction was what allowed a project to continue seamlessly after the death of the king who started it, or the master builder who designed it. The workforce, a vast and diverse body of skilled artisans and seasonal laborers, did not need to understand the cosmic significance of their work. They only needed to follow the plan with exacting consistency, trusting that the man holding the knotted rope and the sacred diagram knew the path to a perfect, balanced world. The breathtaking symmetry we see today in these ancient complexes is therefore the physical form of a single, powerful idea, maintained by an unbroken chain of command that stretched from the throne down to the stonecutter, all moving in lockstep toward a harmonious horizon. The most profound symmetry was sometimes borrowed directly from the land itself. Ancient master planners did not see the natural world as an obstacle to be conquered, but as a divine collaborator. A towering peak, a solitary mesa, or the sacred spring where a river began could be chosen as the fixed, unshakable center of their entire design. This landmark became the true north of their geometric vision, the anchor around which all man-made symmetry would gracefully revolve. At the Oracle of Delphi, the architects did not flatten the rugged slopes of Mount Parnassus. Instead, they let the mountain dictate the terms. The winding sacred way climbs the incline in a series of switchbacks, each turn revealing a new temple or treasury placed with deliberate care to create a rhythmic, processional experience. The symmetry here is not a rigid, bilateral mirror, but a dynamic balance between the built structures and the overwhelming presence of the mountain itself. The entire sanctuary feels like an organic outgrowth of the rock, a place where human order pays homage to a greater, natural one. High in the Andes, this philosophy reached its ultimate expression. Inca stonemasons performed a kind of architectural magic, fitting their precisely cut blocks so perfectly against outcrops of living bedrock that you cannot slip a blade between them. These natural stone formations were not quarried away. They were incorporated into the walls of temples or carved into elaborate altars and seats, making the symmetry of the city feel like a direct continuation of the mountain's own geology. This approach required immense flexibility and ingenuity from the designers. Their ideal geometric grid had to be warped and adapted to accommodate a cliff face here or a sacred grove there. The challenge was to make this adaptation look effortless, as if the complex had always been destined for that exact spot. This deep collaboration with the environment created an undeniable sense of belonging. The structures were not imposed upon the landscape, they were invited into it. This reverence for natural features transformed the architecture from a statement of human power into a dialogue with the living earth, a partnership that gave these places a soulful harmony no perfectly flat plane could ever hope to achieve. The final, breathtaking symmetry of these sites stands in silent contrast to the roaring, chaotic effort that created them. Moving a single 2-ton block of stone is a monumental task for a modern team with machinery. Now try to picture moving 2 million of them, some weighing as much as 80 tons, across dozens of kilometers of desert, and then lifting them with perfect precision to the height of a 40-story building. This was the daily reality for the builders of the Great Pyramid. The prevailing theory suggests they constructed a colossal spiraling ramp of mud brick and rubble that coiled around the rising structure like a serpent. Along this earthen highway, teams of laborers would have dragged massive sledges, likely lubricated with water to reduce friction, inching each block higher and higher in a slow, relentless procession. But the ramps were only one part of a much larger, invisible machine. This machine ran on logistics, the symmetrical flow of materials and labor. Think of the quarrymen, a specialized team who understood the grain of the stone and knew exactly where to cut. Then came the transporters who maneuvered the blocks onto sledges and boats. Next were the skilled stone dressers at the site, who gave each block its final, perfect shape. Finally, the placement teams, using levers and rollers, set each stone with astonishing accuracy. This entire operation required a rhythm as precise as the architecture itself. It was a logistical symmetry, a perfectly coordinated dance of thousands of people, each movement calculated to support the next. Feeding this army of workers was a feat of social engineering in its own right. A permanent, symmetrical supply chain had to be established, with bakeries, breweries, and fish salting operations running on a daily schedule to provide the thousands of calories needed for such backbreaking labor. The visible, silent harmony of the finished pyramid is therefore a monument to this invisible, decades-long symphony of coordinated human effort. The logistics were not just a means to an end. They were the very engine that breathed life into the symmetrical vision, a testament to what humanity can achieve when countless individual acts are orchestrated into a single, unified purpose. These philosophies understood the universe as a delicate dance between light and dark, action and rest, the masculine and the feminine. To build a city was to participate in this cosmic choreography, and the tool for this participation was symmetry. In ancient Egypt, this was the principle of Maat, a concept representing truth, justice, and the fundamental order of the cosmos. A pharaoh's primary duty was to uphold Maat, and his temples, with their flawless axial symmetry, were the physical instruments of this duty. They were machines for maintaining universal balance. On the other side of the world, in Vedic India, the similar concept of archaea described the inherent rhythm and harmony of all creation. A ritual fire altar, constructed with precise geometric proportions, was not just a place for offering, it was a focal point for sustaining archaea itself. The very act of building it correctly was a sacred, world-sustaining act. This idea finds a powerful parallel in the Chinese philosophy of the Tao, the natural way of the universe, which emphasizes the dynamic balance between yin and yang. The ancient practice of feng shui emerged directly from this worldview. It was the applied science of arranging homes, tombs, and entire cities in harmonious balance with the surrounding landscape, the mountains, rivers, and wind currents, to ensure the unimpeded flow of life force or Chi. A building positioned correctly according to these principles was not merely well-placed, it was morally and cosmically aligned, contributing to the health and fortune of its inhabitants. For the Greek philosopher Plato, the pursuit of this balance led directly to geometry. He saw in the circle, the square, and the triangle not just shapes, but the eternal and perfect forms that underpinned a chaotic physical world. To build using these symmetrical forms was to reach for the divine, to imprint a fragment of perfection onto the earthly realm. This profound philosophical foundation is what separates ancient symmetry from a simple design preference. It was a necessary condition for a righteous and prosperous existence. The staggering investment of decades of labor and vast resources becomes understandable only when we see it as an act of cosmic maintenance. Every perfectly laid stone was a prayer for balance, a declaration that human order could and must reflect the greater harmony of the stars. From the sacred geometry that laid the first stones to the philosophical beliefs that guided the final design, our journey reveals a unifying truth. These ancient complexes were not just buildings, they were profound statements about humanity's place in a vast and ordered cosmos. We have walked the central axes that channeled spiritual energy, gazed through windows aligned with the solstice sun, and traced the modular rhythms that coordinated thousands of workers. Each strategy, from celestial alignment to the humble grid, was a thread in a single, magnificent tapestry of balance. This pursuit of symmetry was far more than a technical achievement. It was the physical manifestation of a culture's deepest values, a way of encoding their understanding of the universe, their social structures, and their quest for harmony directly into the landscape. The legacy of this ancient genius is not confined to ruins. It echoes in the grand plazas of our modern cities, in the deliberate layouts of our public spaces, and in our enduring appreciation for buildings that feel both strong and beautiful. The Roman architect Vitruvius captured this timeless ideal when he proclaimed that good architecture must possess fermitas, utilitas, and venustas, strength, utility, and beauty. In their obsessive pursuit of symmetry, these ancient builders mastered all three, creating structures that have endured for millennia. So the next time you see a photograph of the pyramids of Giza, the terraced majesty of Machu Picchu, or the ordered expanse of the Roman Forum, look beyond the stone. Remember the invisible lines of geometry, the generations of astronomical observation, and the sheer, coordinated will of countless individuals who shared a vision of perfect balance. We hope this exploration has given you a new lens through which to see these wonders of the ancient world. If you enjoyed this deep dive into architectural history, we invite you to subscribe for more content. And we would love to hear from you which ancient site symmetry amazes you the most. Share your thoughts in the comments below.